Well, hello students. Today we're going to learn about different angles that are formed with two parallel lines and a line that cuts through those parallel lines called a transversal. My understanding is that you've had this before in middle school, at least some of it, and so hopefully this won't be too big a deal. Now on your notes, the first problem I want to add to it. First of all, most of the time you're going to have little arrows on the lines to indicate that they are parallel. Then this is what we call the transversal. And it cuts across those two parallel lines and it creates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 angles. And I would like you to write those down. Now, all the pairs I'm going to show you are what we call congruent. In other words, if one of them's 30 degrees, the other one's 30 degrees. There's only one pair that's not congruent, and they are supplementary, meaning they add up to be 180, but we'll get to those in a moment. Okay, first of all, angles 1 and 7 and 2 and 8 are what we call alternate exterior. Angles. So that would be angles 1 and 7, angles 2 and angles 8. And they are congruent. That's the symbol for congruent. It's an equal sign with a little curvy thing over it. And it means they are identical in measurement. Now, notice between the parallel lines we have 4 and 6 and 3 and 5, which are also alternating across the transversal. But they're on the inside, so we call those alternate interior angles. So the alternate interior angles are angles 4 and 6 and angles 3 and 5. And they are congruent. Now, the last pair I want to show you here, I'll show you the others over, I think, on example 2. So we've got this thing, we got this thing. Angles 4 and 5 and angles 3 and 6 are what we call same side interior. They're between the parallel lines, they're on the same side as the transversal, and they are not congruent, but together they add up to be 180 degrees. They're supplementary. So same side interior, or sometimes they're called consecutive. It's one after the other. And that would be angles 4 and 5 and angles 3 and 6. And they are supplementary. They add up to be 180. So in this particular example, we're looking at angles 3 and 7. And to make matters a little more confusing, this is the pair I didn't show you. If you'll notice that angles Y and angles X are in the same position with this cluster and this cluster. And we call those corresponding. And they are always congruent. Now, to add to the notes a little bit, let me draw a baby one over here. Notice you got 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 and 5 are in corresponding locations. This is top left, that's top left in terms of this angle cluster and that angle cluster. Angles 2 and angle 6 are also corresponding. That's top right, that's top right. Angles 3 and 7 are corresponding. This is bottom right, bottom right. Angles 4 and 8, this is bottom left, in terms of that cluster. And they're in corresponding locations, therefore they are also congruent. So number 2, go ahead and write that down. This is alternate interior angles. Number 3 would be alternate exterior angles. And angle 4 are same side interior. They can't be outside. They're on the same side of the transversal. And so these are same side, or like I said before, sometimes they're called consecutive. And this is the one exception. These are not congruent. These are supplementary. All right, so that's examples 1 and 4. All right, for examples 5 and 6, we're trying to find the measure of this angle and that angle. Notice the little red arrows. That's proof that the lines are parallel. Now these two are in what we would call same side interior. So go ahead and write that down because this is your note. Same side interior angles. And they are not congruent, they are supplementary. So let's call that one x. So we can say 53 plus x is equal to 180. Subtracting 53 from both sides, and we get that x is 127 degrees. And you can check, is 127 plus 53 180? Sure it is. Okay, in example 6, now this doesn't actually fit any that I just showed you, but what you've got here is that this angle I'll call x plus 110. Notice they form a straight line. So this is what we call a linear pair, and they're always supplementary. So we can say x plus 110 equals 180, or in other words, x is equal to 70 degrees. And that's examples 5 and 6. All right, problems 7 through 10. We are to solve for x. First thing is you have to identify which angles. Now, notice in this cluster compared to this cluster, 27x angle is top right. This negative 4 plus 28x angle is also top right. They are in corresponding locations with each cluster. So we call these corresponding angles. And again, write these down in your notes, please. And they are always congruent. So, in other words, they equal each other. So we can therefore say set 27x angle is equal to negative 4 plus 28x angle. And quickly solve for x. In this case, we'll subtract 27x. We'll add 4. 28 minus 27 is 1. So x is equal to 4. Now on these problems, make sure that you're solving for x and not having to plug it back in. Sometimes you're asked to do that as well. All right, example 8. These two angles are the same side. They're on the interior of these two parallel lines. Therefore, they are supplementary, same side interior. So to solve for x here, we're going to do 15x minus 5 plus 80 equals 180. So negative 5 plus 80 is 75. And subtracting 75 from both sides, we get 105 there. And let's see, dividing by 15, what do we get here? We get that x is equal to 7. All right, example 9. Now, This doesn't fit the ones I've shown you before, but hopefully you can see that, notice they form an X. So these are vertical angles, and vertical angles are always congruent. So what are we going to do? We're going to say, well, 50 is equal to 11x minus 5. Add 5 to both sides. 55 is equal to 11x. And then we'll divide by 11, so x is equal to 5. Now, example 10. These two angles are on the interior, and they alternate over the transversal. So these are alternate interior angles, always congruent. So once again, we just set them equal to each other. We'll say 10x is equal to 9x plus 5. Subtract 9x from 10x, and you're left with x is equal to 5. And that's problem 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, problems 11 and 12. Now, I'm not sure on your notes how well this came out, but they want the measure of the angle, not just solving for x. We're going to solve for x, then plug it back in for the one in bold. In this case, it's this one, and the bold one over here is this one here. So you got to decide, all right, what pair of angles are we dealing with here? Well, alternate interior. They are congruent to each other. They equal each other. So we set these equal to each other. 7x plus 10. Put it equal to the other angle, 9x plus 10. So I'm going to subtract 7x and add 10. I get 20 over here is equal to 9x minus 7x is 2x. Divide both sides by 2, x is equal to 10. All right, now that's the first step, but we haven't now plugged it in. So we're going to plug it in here for x, 9 times 10 minus 10. So that's 90 minus 10 would be 80 degrees. So this angle is 80 degrees, which incidentally this one has to be 80 as well. You could double check, plug 10 in here. 7 times 10 is 70, plus 10 is 80. All right, example 12. They're both on the interior, they're on the same side. So again, this is the exception. These two are supplementary, they add up to be 180. So to solve for x, we're going to say 180 is equal to the sum of these two things. And combining like terms, we get 8x plus 21x is 29x, negative 2 plus 8 is positive 6. We'll subtract 6 from both sides. We get 174 is 29x. Divide both sides by 29. And let's see, what do we get? No, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yes, we get that x is equal to 6. Okay, but again, we need to plug it in here. So we're going to do 21 times x, which we now know is 6, plus 8. And 21 times 6 plus 8 is equal to 134 degrees. And so that would be the answers for problems 11 and 12. Okay, problems 13 through 16 is being asked a little bit differently. Find the measure of the indicated angle, where the question mark is, that makes these two parallel. So you're thinking backwards a little bit. Now here's the point. How do we know that these two are alternate interior angles? Well, we would know that they are if this is 121, correct? Because if this is 121, then it would be congruent with that one. So 121 degrees means that those are alternate interior angles. Therefore, since they are alternate interior angles, that means these two lines, line U and line V, have to be parallel, since they produced alternate interior angles that are congruent. You can have alternate interior angles that are not congruent. For instance, like here, angle A and angle B are alternate interior angles, but obviously they're not the same. So here we have number 14. Notice the positions. This is bottom left, bottom left. These are in corresponding positions. So if these two are parallel, then that would mean this angle 94 would be a 94 up here. And if they are congruent, since they're corresponding, then yes, these two are parallel. Now, number 15 and 16, it's the same sort of deal. I'm going to do my writing up here so that you can see it on the screen a little more easily. If these two are congruent, no, excuse me, let me say it this way. These two are in corresponding locations. This is top left, that's top left in terms of that angle cluster and that one. So if this angle 70 is the same as here, in other words, if they're both 70 degrees, then yes, indeed, these two are parallel. So in this case, we're going to find the value of x that will make this one 70. So we're going to say 70 degrees, set it equal to 6 plus 16x, subtract 6 from both sides, and divide by 16. And let's see, where am I here? I'm on the wrong page here. Divide both sides by 16, x would equal to 4. So if x is 4, then this becomes 70 degrees, which is congruent with that one, which means therefore these two lines are parallel. All right, these two angles are in the position of what we call alternate exterior. So once again, if this is 60 degrees, since that is 60 degrees, they are congruent, therefore the lines are parallel. So let's find what value of x would turn that into be 60 degrees. So we'll say 60 degrees is 13x minus 5. Add 5 to both sides and divide both sides by 13, and yes, I didn't finish it up. Okay, let me grab my calculator. So what do we got? We've got 65 divided by 13 is 5. So if x is equal to 5, then they both equal 60 degrees. Therefore, they are congruent. And that's examples 14 through 16. All right, the last two problems, 17 and 18. We're still solving for x that would make the angles congruent or supplementary, proving that the lines are in fact parallel. These are alternate interior angles, which means they would be congruent. So let's see what value for x would make them equal to each other. So here we'll subtract 11x, we'll add 5, so we get 12x minus 11x is 1x, and 5 plus 5 is 10. So if x is 10, then these two are congruent, which means these two lines are parallel. So let's see what, just for the heck of it, 12 times 10 is 120 minus 5. So that's going to be 115 degrees, which should be what this is. 11 times 10 is 110 plus 5, sure enough, that's 115 degrees. Therefore, the two lines are parallel. Now, last one, number 18, these are the same side on the interior. So if in fact these two add up to be 180, then we would know that line U and V would be parallel to each other. So let's find it out. So we're going to say 180 is equal to 130 plus 16x plus 2. And so we've got 180. 130 plus 2 is 132 plus 16x. We'll subtract 132 from 180. And let's see, what am I doing here? Yes, so we've got 48 is equal to 16x. Divide both sides by 16. X would equal to the number 3. And that's the lesson on parallel lines, angles, and transversals.